The thing standing between the trees should not have been alive. Its body was stretched impossibly tall, and its pale face seemed to glow beneath the moonlight filtering through the pines. When it slowly turned its head toward me, I realized it had no eyes. The forest had gone silent around me. Even the wind had stopped moving through the branches, as if the woods themselves were holding their breath. Then the thing smiled, revealing rows of teeth, far too long for any human mouth. I couldn't move. Every instinct screamed at me to run, but terror rooted me to the damp earth beneath my boots. The creature lifted one arm and pointed toward the darkness behind me. A voice whispered directly beside my ear. It sounded old, cracked, and impossibly close despite nobody standing there. The voice spoke only 4 words. "You were expected tonight." I finally broke free from my paralysis and ran blindly through the woods. Branches tore at my clothes, while roots threatened to throw me to the ground. The sound of footsteps followed me the entire way. Those footsteps never sped up. They never slowed down. They remained perfectly behind me until I reached my truck and escaped onto the highway. I thought I had survived. I thought I had left whatever haunted those woods behind forever. I was wrong. Everything had started 3 days earlier. I had traveled to Black Hollow Forest after hearing stories about its untouched wilderness and remote campsites. As a freelance photographer searching for unusual locations, the place seemed perfect. The forest sat several miles from the nearest town. Dense pine trees covered rolling hills, and fog frequently settled between the trunks even during warm afternoons. The locals spoke about the area with visible discomfort. One elderly man at a gas station warned me not to stay after sunset. His expression became serious when he noticed my camping gear. He told me some trails were older than the town itself. I laughed politely and assumed he was repeating local folklore. Every remote place seemed to have ghost stories attached to it. Black Hollow appeared no different. The first day passed quietly. I explored several trails and photographed wildlife throughout the afternoon. Nothing unusual happened until dusk approached. While reviewing photographs near my campsite, I noticed something strange in one image. A tall figure appeared between distant trees behind a deer I had photographed earlier. I was certain nobody had been there. The figure appeared blurred despite the rest of the image being perfectly clear. Its proportions looked wrong, almost distorted. The more I studied it, the less human it seemed. That night I woke repeatedly to unfamiliar sounds. Soft knocking echoed through the forest at regular intervals. The noise resembled someone tapping wood against a tree. Each time I stepped outside my tent, the knocking stopped immediately. Silence would linger for several minutes before the strange rhythm began again. Eventually, exhaustion forced me back to sleep. The next morning, I discovered footprints surrounding my campsite. They circled my tent several times before disappearing into the woods. The tracks were far larger than any human footprints I had ever seen. I considered leaving. Something about the tracks deeply unsettled me, despite my attempts to remain rational. Curiosity ultimately convinced me to stay one more day. Later that afternoon, I found an overgrown trail absent from every map I carried. Thick vegetation partially concealed its entrance. Something compelled me to follow it. The path wound deeper into the forest than any maintained trail. Strange symbols carved into tree bark appeared every few hundred feet. Most looked ancient and weathered. As evening approached, I discovered a rusted metal sign lying face down among the weeds. When I turned it over, faded letters became visible beneath layers of dirt. The warning sent a chill through my body. It read, restricted area, entry forbidden. Beyond the sign, the forest changed. Trees grew unnaturally close together, blocking much of the sunlight. The air felt colder despite the season. I began noticing scraps of fabric caught on branches. Some looked decades old, while others appeared disturbingly recent. Several pieces resembled torn hiking gear. Further ahead, I discovered a weathered backpack partially buried beneath pine needles. Inside were water-damaged photographs belonging to someone I didn't recognize. The final photograph showed the same tall figure from my own image. That night, I couldn't stop thinking about the backpack. Questions raced through my mind long after darkness settled across the forest. Sleep eventually came, but it brought nightmares. I dreamed of endless trees stretching beneath a black sky. Shadowy figures stood silently between trunks, while distant voices repeated my name. Each whisper sounded closer than the last. When I woke, muddy footprints covered the outside of my tent again. This time, they stopped directly beside where my head had rested during the night. The realization made my blood run cold. I decided to investigate the backpack further. Hidden inside a damaged compartment, I found a small journal. Most pages were unreadable, but several entries remained intact. The writer described hearing voices within the forest. They claimed something lived beneath Black Hollow. Repeated references mentioned an abandoned cabin and a hidden entrance underground. The journal ended abruptly. The final sentence simply read, "It knows I'm here now." That discovery should have convinced me to leave. Instead, obsession took hold. I needed answers. At that point, I genuinely didn't know what to do. If you had discovered what I found that day, would you have kept investigating or walked away forever? Let me know what you think before I tell you what happened next. Using clues from the journal, I searched for the abandoned cabin. Hours passed before I found it standing within a clearing I was certain hadn't existed before. The structure appeared ancient and impossibly out of place. Its windows were covered with wooden boards. Dark stains marked portions of the exterior walls. The surrounding trees leaned inward as though watching it. Inside, dust covered every surface. Yet footprints crossed the floor toward a trapdoor hidden beneath a rotting rug. Fresh footprints. The trapdoor led into a narrow tunnel, descending deep underground. A foul odor drifted upward from the darkness below. Against every survival instinct I possessed, I climbed down. The tunnel opened into an enormous chamber beneath the forest. Ancient stone pillars surrounded a circular pit extending beyond sight. Symbols identical to those on the trees covered every surface. Bones littered the ground, hundreds of them. Human and animal remains mixed together in grotesque piles surrounding the pit. Then I heard movement below. Something massive shifted within the darkness. The sound resembled wet flesh scraping against stone. A low growl vibrated through the chamber. The creature emerged slowly. Its elongated limbs unfolded from the shadows, while pale skin stretched tightly across an unnatural frame. Countless eyes opened across its body. I realized the figure I had seen between the trees wasn't the creature itself. It had merely been one of its servants. Dozens of tall, eyeless beings stepped from hidden passages surrounding the chamber. They moved silently toward me. Their smiles widened impossibly. The creature within the pit spoke without opening a mouth. Its voice echoed directly inside my mind. It told me Black Hollow had been feeding it for centuries. Missing hikers, hunters, travelers. They had all become offerings. The servants advanced closer. Terror overwhelmed every rational thought. I grabbed a lantern from the ground and hurled it into a pile of old wooden supports. Flames erupted instantly. The chamber shook violently as fire spread through ancient structures. The eyeless figure shrieked with a sound unlike anything human. Stone cracked overhead. I ran. The tunnel collapsed behind me while smoke filled the air. Somehow I reached the surface, seconds before the cabin vanished beneath a wave of falling earth. The forest itself seemed to scream. Authorities searched the area after I reported everything. They found no cabin, no tunnel, and no underground chamber. Officially, nothing existed beneath Black Hollow Forest. My photographs disappeared from my camera. The journal vanished from my truck. Every piece of evidence simply ceased to exist. Months passed before the nightmares began again. I would wake hearing distant knocking outside my home. Always the same rhythm. Then came the footprints. Large muddy tracks occasionally appeared near my property after rainstorms. They never led toward my house. They always led away. I stopped returning to forests. Loud noises still make me jump unexpectedly. Some nights I sit awake until sunrise watching dark corners of my room. Last year another hiker disappeared near Black Hollow. Search teams never found a trace of him. The case remains unsolved. A week ago I received an envelope with no return address. Inside was a single photograph. It showed me sleeping through my bedroom window. Standing behind the camera's reflection was a tall, eyeless figure. I still don't know who took that photograph. What terrifies me most is the possibility that something never left Black Hollow at all. Maybe it simply followed me home. And sometimes, late at night, I still hear those footsteps stopping just outside my door. If you enjoyed this story, make sure to like this video, subscribe to Grave Nova Stories, and share your thoughts in the comments below. I'll see you in the next nightmare.